So, Avantika, what does winding down look like for you after a hard day's worth of hustling?
Think winding down is how do you say a terminology that is a little calmer in version to what I do. I would definitely keep it as probably coming down from a hard days of work and just chill for a bit, looking at music and painting of sorts. Yeah.
Hmm. Painting, that's interesting. I once, at the side of a beach recently, painted with a friend on a handheld canvas, and that was so relaxing. It
I can
was
understand.
just, yeah, it was just an impromptu idea that I thought was better than grabbing a meal to catch up. So much more fun, so much more interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah, tell me more about your tales of painting. When did you start?
It
How often
would
do you do it? Things like that.
It's been a long ride, I'd say. I started off with going to classes and going for oil painting and acrylic painting classes. Post that, I did my Cambridge A levels and I had art and design as one of my subjects
Oh,
in my A levels. Yeah, um, got a distinction. Um,
wow.
yeah, yeah. So it's been a tough ride, and I think post even coming to college, painting has been sort of something that calms me down on a daily basis after, let's say, a lot of hard work through the day. But due to my course being economics, it does I do tend to allocate lesser time towards painting, which I feel very sad about. But yeah, I do try to make out as much time as possible whenever I can, work on a few canvases, work on some acrylics as much as possible.
Mm. I recently I just put down uh, a sentence about how painting feels to a painter, and I'm going to read that for you, and I want your comments on it. So I wrote, when the hues seep into the fabric of the canvas, there is a moment of serendipity that we artists feel. It's the most beautiful feeling there is.
I think it is rightly said, but when I say serendipity, I think it might contradict because I've been in touch with a lot of artists from time to time. A lot of my friends have also pursued art in their own ways. And I think art is not only a serendipity to the artist, it's also a form of communication of various emotions. And it can convey enough to a visualizer, showing what the artist may be going through, also. And it's a medium of communication for voicing out a turmoils that engulf a person.
Wow, that's profound, truly.
Yeah. I
Turmoils
think that
that
is
are
more visually seen in. This is a very controversial statement from me, but I feel like when people talk a lot about vandalism, I do bring up Banksy often, and that is also a form of art, and I feel that is not talked about enough, and it should be conveyed enough for political representations or not.
interesting. Wow, I'm going to let that sink in, and come back to how when I said painting, I actually meant playing with watercolors, moving the brush around the page because I'm no professional as such. And I was just thinking about how you took art as a subject in A levels, right, which is a very, very rigorous
Yeah.
course, and
Yes.
uh, it actually indicates the professional nature of uh, of uh, of the extent to which you've
Yeah.
learned learned it, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
just wanted to double click on whether when you've gone through the experience of learning art to such an extent, can you still do it for fun without it being a whole academic project or something big that you undertake?
It is very possible that is there. There are a lot of instances when I do art for just relaxing or calming down, or even exploring it as a medium of gifting for people, which I do on a lot of times actually. I do paint a lot of people, make doodles, and give it to them on their birthdays. But nevertheless, it is because of the rigorous course that I went through, it always poses a challenge sometimes, as in you do a form of art, and when you do not see it as the level of what you probably used to do before, because I do it on a much lower scale nowadays. And when I look at it and I understand that maybe this wasn't what on par of what I used to do in my A levels and my examinations, I do. There's a sort of a blurry line that is over there in which you do not know whether you're doing it for combating your academic professionalism, or you're doing it just as a medium of expression. So yeah,
That's deep, and wow, that is certainly very interesting. I'd like to emphasize on the fact that this is something I'm going to take away. The fact that you spend time creating unique individual art pieces to give as gifts, and uh, I think that's wonderful. Hopefully, one day I'll be on the receiving end. But
definitely, definitely.
jokes aside, I actually do put some effort into making the gifts I give personal, but I don't think it gets more personal than creating an art piece,
Yeah,
especially for the person you're giving it to.
yeah,
Maybe someday when I graduate from playing with watercolors, I will give pieces of arts on beautiful canvases to people. As of now, it's just uh, a few lines of poetry, maybe on their birthday or some special occasion. Uh, I love gifting interesting socks like the ones from H&M that have those
yeah.
emojis. Yeah, I find
I
fun socks
actually,
so nice.
I mean, it's not like art, I'd say, but I do paint on like white sneakers, whatever people really like, and like I gift it. So my
Wow.
brother's wedding was happening, so I like painted him minions since he loved them. So I painted them and I gave it for his wedding as a gift.
Yeah, there's this
Yeah,
tradition in the weddings that happen in my family where uh, the groom's footwear are stolen. So,
yeah,
yeah, I can totally imagine like these young kids playing with those shoes that have like a painting of minions
minions
on
painting.
them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's very
That
fun.
is
Yeah,
a very fun graphic to have, and I think in the moments I need a little bit of laughter, I'm going to reflect on this. Think of kids playing with minions painted on
minions.
white
Yes.
shoes. This takes me back to sometime in high school. So there was this art page that I used to follow, and it was run by somebody who was a couple of degrees of connections away. So I didn't personally know them. I'd heard of them, right? Because that's what the platform does. And they used to do this exact same thing, right? Painting on white sneakers and on jeans, making it customized and modified. At that time, I couldn't really appreciate how interesting that makes your apparel. But yeah, when I think back on about that page, I really wished that I had mustered up the amount of courage to an extent, or maybe a better word I'm looking for is bias towards action to get
Yeah.
a pair of sneakers for myself. I think those would be like a pair that I would keep even after they were worn out, just because I was so emotionally, I would have been connected to them.
Yeah,
So
you can definitely send me like whatever you'd like. I'd probably make someone give it to you.
yes, I'm going to hold you to that. But
Yes.
let's switch gears here and talk about when what you do when you are hustling, and let's keep it a little more interesting. Extracurriculars. So we'll take
Yeah.
it one at a time. Which is the most interesting extracurricular you're doing or have done that added value to your journey?
I definitely, it is also one thing is MUNs. So I've taken a bit of a backstage now because of the amount of work I'm kind of involved with. But I used to be very active in the MUN circuit in Bangalore and Calcutta and Delhi. I've also participated in HMU in Hyderabad. But I think the reason why I loved it so much, which is kind of niched in other manners, is I started off with press and I've never stopped. I've always been in press no matter what. I've gone from going from the Hindu to like Reuters to head of press, head of newsletter, everything. And it's been a crazy ride, but I really wish I can get back into it. I love it so much.
Someday. I always thought of Man as, by the way, I've gotten a lot of comments about calling MUNs Muns. I think that's something we we Bangaloreans do exclusively,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the people from the northern circuits don't really appreciate it. But for us, for me at least, it's always going to be Man, right? So yeah,
yeah,
coming back, I've always thought of months as activities that sort of springboard you into more nicher uh, ideas and nicher areas of expertise. It's just such an uplifting experience where you realize how much of an intellectual rock you have been living under, and
yeah,
there are so many skills you develop all at once just by observing. Right, there is so many social skills, and there is logical reasoning and negotiation and persuasion, and that's on the soft skills side. And the hard skills, you learn about research and actually the uh, committee topics. So whether it's spec pool or renewable energy or whatever it is, and having to take on the perspective of a different country, because there's only one person who gets to represent the country they're from, and they're the only one operating with the context. So, so
yeah.
yeah,
Press work is a little harder, but yeah.
so I'm guilty of not doing too many months, and I don't recall how press exactly work. But if I'm right, press would actually need to have the context of all the regions and create uh, fake news for the purposes of the competition. That would sort of uh, that would
Bring in
dictate,
more,
yeah,
yeah.
that dictate the actions of the delegates.
If I had to use the Gen Z lingo, it's more like bringing more tea and drama into the conference.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Okay, yes, I remember what press did. And in this one MUN of mine, I was Japan, if I'm not wrong, and I was banking very, very heavily on the fact that we're under the US military umbrella, so that any sort of militant aggression towards our land be uh, would be considered as an action against the United States, which has one of the strongest navies in the world, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so after the committee ended, the MUN ended, director or the EB told us that you're very lucky that the session ended when it did, because our next release was that the US has called back the submarine that you had made your entire case on. So
Yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
good.
I probably would not have ranked in that experience
Yeah.
had things moved a little differently, had we come to a resolution, or whatever it was. But tell me more about what were the top skills that you learned from your manning experience.
One definitely, obviously, casual debating that's always associated with months. The other thing is, I think being in press specifically paved the way for my research work because it has a lot of, since you're obviously analyzing every country's stance on the particular issue, I think that ignites you with a lot more ideas and perspectives as you go as a student, as a manner. And it the one huge thing that I think it taught me was to look at every situation or idea or instance with a numerous with multiple perspectives and analyze the situation accordingly. Because let's say, for example, there was how do I say, Colombia in UNODC that I had to analyze being a press reporter or being head of press. I had to analyze Colombia's stance in UNODC with respect to other countries and how its relations are with them also. So I think that helped me a lot when I tackle my current research papers and I need to understand which all perspectives I need to bring in to amalgamate the whole thing and make it into something that's clearly defined and realized by my viewers.
Interesting. Wow, that is actually some.
It's a weird aspect, but it's an aspect that I think I personally learned at least.
I think weird is underrated. I personally am a huge cheerleader for being weird and sort of promote weirdness. I don't believe in the notion of normal. I think everyone is just weird in their own way. And when a bunch of weirdos who are weird in the same way come together, that becomes the normal for then and there. But the
Yeah,
key
yeah.
being then and there, right? So coming back to your experience as press, extensive experience, might I say, as press.
It's not that much.
I so I mean, if it wasn't much in quantity, I'm sure it was great in quality, because from the conversations we've had, I know of how the research work that you did in MUN served as the pedestal for the research that you're conducting now, right? And that's research across several domains, that's research across so many different things. So, we're going to talk about some of the things that you're researching on. But first, let's talk about the fun garage anecdote.
Okay, wait, I need you to specify which one.
The one where you rented out a garage to build.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so that is very funny. Um, I had to build. I was actually looking at building a brick, more around the sustainability centric, using bagasse, which is a sugarcane waste. A lot of polycarbonate materials, a lot of plastic, and extensive use of existing construction waste. And so basically, one of my near my PG, one of the houses was getting broken down. I saw the enormous amounts of waste that were generated due to the breaking down of a house, the demolition. And I feel like that is also a huge problem that a lot of people go through. That is, what do you do or deal with that waste in a way? And that is like something I really wanted to tackle. And brainstorming with my dad, brainstorming with a few other colleagues and students, I was like, how about I just come up with a brick that uses all of these wastes together make it into a very cost reductive process, and make something into a reality. And the funny part was, I went to my one of my ex's houses, and I asked him, I was like, "Hey, can I just get a garage?" And it was like far. It was near ISC campus actually, and I was like, "I need this garage," and he's like, "For what?" And I'm just like, "To build a goddamn brick." he, he just stood there. I remember for like 10 minutes, and he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, to build a brick." And I don't think he would have ever imagined it. Me asking, just coming over and be like, "Hey, I need a garage to build a brick," and um, it was touch wood, it was very wonderful for him to give it to me because he was also a design student and he used it a lot. So and it was very funny since I had like material scientists, I had people from BBMP, I had people from Ultratech, I had people from God knows where, like coming in and just holding his place and just being like, "What is happening?" And I still remember like, so he had like a sister and she used to like come and she used to just be like, "Oh my god, like what is she building over here?"
Which
And it
secret
was
lab has our garage been turned into? What top secret project
yeah,
is going
and
on here?
even more funny because we were all like wearing masks because it's obviously like a lot of compounds that we were getting in, and we were like all wearing masks and working on something and with gloves and whatnot. And there's one guy with like a steel wedger, like hammering onto something and breaking it out, and it was insane. But it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I'm sure. And this is proof that you've done hands down work, right? Not theorized it, not thought about it, but actually brought an idea to life or died
Yeah.
trying, might I say.
Actually, on that note, the first version of the brick that I had made, it wasn't even a sustainability brick. It was just a normal one. And I just wanted to know the process of how it was created. So I brought like a bag of cement. I made a stencil out of wood using cut wood. Went into a carpenter shop. I got like nails. I made the whole thing and I poured in cement. Like used my hands to like smooth it out, and it was such a beautiful experience.
I'm sure. I can't even imagine it. You almost want to make me want to try. Maybe
I
someday.
will make you try it with me one day.
Someday for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, when you narrate the story, it feels like it's that simple, right?
It's very
But
simple.
that
It's like these small things that I feel make up to someone being something later on.
yeah, it's the simplicity is, I think, in the difference between inaction and action, right? And the moment you turned your potential into kinetic is when you had an experience of a lifetime. This is a story you'll carry throughout your life that will, inspire and enlighten the minds of several people you're going to meet. And, one of my goals is to be a great investor, right? And when I say investor, I mean like those long term kind of folks who buy and sit for years, and the kind of people who understand businesses at great depth. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is when you mentioned a use case for sugarcane waste into brick building, however potential, gives me insight into what one of the companies I own that produces sugarcanes could possibly do with their waste material, and how that uh, increases the product mix that they could offer, and changes business metrics and the views and the way I think of possibilities, right? So I love speaking to folks who do crazy stuff because it ignites ideas that were you never knew was possible, right?
I think my
Uh,
ex thought of me as more than crazy, but yeah.
Lord bless his soul for giving you his garage, though. I think had you not had the space, you wouldn't have been able to go as far as you did.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
maybe you would have, but it would have been a very, very different story.
I
Uh,
think that way, I love my position, at least where I stay, which I think is a huge boon for me in terms of connecting, getting people, getting places to do. The reason why, even if I chose my ex's place or not, a great place that was nearby was also the Ultratech head office of Bangalore, which they were willing to actually give out. And I was like, no, sorry, it's like too professional of a place to me for me to get like hands on dirty over here. So yeah,
oh wow! So I mean, I guess you did have an alternative that would have been better, but
yeah,
I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that all great minds start in a garage, and it wouldn't have been
that's
fair to fair for you to have passed on a garage had you had
yeah,
the opportunity, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, very interesting because I also tried to fix the global warming issues caused from concrete in theory. So that's the key difference, right? And which is why I'm going to take back from the conversation in is my converting my ideas into some material form. And yeah, there was my friends Nicola, Samara, and Abdullah, who are from three different parts of the world. I'm in the fourth. So one's from South Africa, one's from Saudi, or some other country in the Middle East, if not from Saudi. And one person was Nicolas was from some European country, right? So we used to get on Zoom calls and discuss how do we reduce carbon emissions from concrete, because I don't think people are going to stop building buildings anytime soon. So a
yeah,
pretty sustainable solution required. But yeah,
yeah,
it's interesting how when you do things, you have a more common ground, right?
yeah,
And at some level, we understand the context around each other's work, even if it's a little. So
yeah.
yeah, this was a very interesting story that I'm going to keep with me to tell people when I introduce you to them. And
I started off with a brick in a garage.
yeah, the amazing Dhar story with uh, brick and the garage.
Yeah,
Okay. So yeah, this was one. Let's talk about something a little more academic. I'm not a personal fan of academia, and I don't do too many academic things. But the thing you're doing is worth mentioning. So we're quickly gonna dip our toes into your academic research endeavor, and then move on.
yes. Okay, so to give more of a context as to why I did this, back last year, I started off with one research paper understanding the water dynamics of Bengaluru, especially, it wasn't last year, it was actually this year during the heat waves that we faced. Um, I think it was also because of a personal connection because I go on a lot of walks around Bangalore and I walk a lot and it's like not like 2 3 kilometers, more like 17 18. um, I walk at Sunday mornings at like 17 18 kilometers.
Walk all the way to dinner, Avantika. I'm kidding, of course. Please.
Yeah. And so there was this one place, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's very close to Kantirva. And it's on the other side actually. And I felt like Kantirva was a barrier which kind of uh, left the very underprivileged who couldn't even access half a tanker even. And then on the other side, you could face almost zero water scarcity. because my PG is in Vasanagar and I had gone and done proper hands-on surveys with shops and houses, and I found out that there was no water, like a real water scarcity around here, especially since it's close proximity to the Vidhan Sauda. But on the other side of Kantirva, like you take a stroll down and there are people who don't even have water to wash their hands. And I felt like that is something I really needed to touch base upon. So I wrote a paper around that, which is analyzing the demand and supply dynamics of water and why it was caused, why the whole shortage was caused, apart from the heat waves. And once it got through my teacher, she told me to focus on something that is on the behavioral aspect. That is, analyze not only people's behavior towards water consumption, but in general levels of consumption. And that's when I stumbled upon the very beautiful topic of microeconomic modeling. Microeconomic time preferences in macroeconomic modeling. So it's a paper that looks at cultural dimensions, personal preferences, personal time preferences of a consumer, and analyzes it on a larger basis, takes a larger pool of people, and adds it into macroeconomic variables. That is, let's say, when a GDP of a country or any other macroeconomic aggregate is calculated of a country on a year basis, you analyze the shift that takes place during certain periods of time, which are due to, let's say, cultural dimensions or individual time preferences. In my paper's case, I took in the context of Christmas, of Durga Puja, of Dhanteras, wherein there are sudden spikes in consumption levels. That is what I was analyzing or touching base upon.
Interesting. You know, we haven't discussed this at depth because my aversion of economics, but now that you've walked me through it, I actually find it interesting because at heart I'm an intellect and I love thinking and talking and discussing and learning. And I was thinking, instigated by your story of what you were researching, was thinking about the water usage around Holi, right, which is a predominantly very, very water intensive festival that we celebrate every year. So I think it would be very interesting to see charts around it or some sort of ideas captured in a paper around it, and I can't wait to read at least some of it. If I'm being honest, I
It's a 9-page document. You can see how much you can read
okay.
out of it.
So yeah, nine page doesn't sound as bad as I thought.
With a lot
But
of with a lot of formulas, mind you.
mhm. So see, I will adore all the curves and edges in the functions of the formula. Maybe not going to try to read too deeply into it.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
something I've left behind in a very, very intentful manner. But yeah, jokes aside, looking forward to reading it. And for everyone else who wants to read it, once it's published, we link it in the Notion doc below. So yeah, so we've spoken about your garage and brick experiment and your research on the water thing. I'm just going to call it that. And it takes me a few attempts to get it right. And it reminds me of my days of when I was 13, 14 years old, used to watch Big Bang Theory on, uh, well, my phone, because back then we didn't really have OTT as a thing. And there were these apps that would give you access to American TV shows that
Shows,
were
yeah.
all the rage in high school, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, all of that since has become illegal, but wasn't when,
We were back in high
yeah,
school.
we
Yeah.
were back in high school. Like, piracy was looked down upon, but it wasn't outright illegal, if I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
wrong. Or maybe it was, and I just don't remember correctly. So,
Yeah.
Anyways, moving on. Uh, so yeah, tell me about other stuff that you're doing. We'll take it from the top. There's so many things you're doing, Avantika. I lose track sometimes, and very proud of you for having done
Um,
more things than
it's
most people our age have tried, right? And this is a line I picked up from somebody on LinkedIn, a fellow founder, grad of SRCC, who's also done many things. But yes, please carry on.
it's been a wild journey, I must say. I think it's all started from last year when I just thought, like, I feel like one thing that my parents, at least, touch with, they've been very supportive in any manner, except for placement cell. um, yeah, I think they've always like pushed me to try and explore new frontiers and everything, and pushed me to always do something or the other that that extends the limit of my capabilities. Um, so I started off last year when my dad suggested me to get into public policy extensively, since I'm also in the field of economics, and he knew that I have a huge affinity for macroeconomics in particular, and he pushed me towards it. That's when I started writing a lot of these research papers, also, especially the one with macroeconomics. And around that time, I thought that I have to um, work on this as much as possible. So I started applying to a lot of public policy fellowships, and I went for the IM. I've started with IMPRI just now, which is the Impact and Research Policy Institute. And once that is done, I also have a side by side where I'm an interning with a high senior official from Niti Aayog who also works with the PM office. So I do write research papers for them and analyze trade regulations and trade laws as much as possible, which is possible by my extent. What we do over there is we look at days outstanding in import and exports, and we try and reduce them as much as possible for importers and exporters, from an Niti Aayog perspective, to make it easier for trade in India and abroad. The third thing I'm kind of working on, which I introduced to you recently, is
We'll come to that in
um,
a minute, actually. So,
okay, yeah,
yeah, that is the highlight. We can't just give that away. uh,
yeah,
uh, Remind me again, you're still a teen, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not even turned 19.
wow. So there you go, right? So, someone who's barely gotten their hands onto a PAN card, if at all, has already influenced public policy, even if it's ever so slightly. And it just is marvelous to think about someone as young as us could have a native interest in public policy, even if it was, influenced to a small extent in the beginning. I don't really think that the things you do can be done by forcing one's hand. That only comes when there is an innate interest at the end of the day, right? It's because
It's all
you
about
like.
passion, I feel like, at the end of the day. It's
Exactly.
all about the, how do you say, the final push that you give yourself in order to achieve something. And that is something that I think everyone should look at into within themselves as to where their innate passion lies. Because there's no point of doing something with it if you do not like it at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little after the third wave of COVID, sometime in 2022, I remember sitting in a room with a few founders who were at a cap raise, right? And they were discussing public policy around drone regulations. So they wanted to do delivery as a service using drones, unmanned drones in India. And I probably didn't understand 4 out of 10 things, and I'm being lenient with myself. It was the figure was probably closer to 6, maybe 7, 7 out of 10 things that were said. And I remember, interjecting every so often, subtly, to ask and catch up. And man, I loved it. I learned so much in that 3 hours. So
Yeah.
that is my little exposure to public policy, and that's when I actually learned that our government is so cooperative to the system, and there are actually frameworks in place to hear out the
Yeah.
uh, people from the industry, right? And I was recently in conversation with an executive director at the Securities Exchange Board of India, and he told me about the sandbox programs different regulators have. Like, who would have thought a fintech company has access to RBI to co-develop their idea and make sure that whatever they're building doesn't shut down because the regulators didn't really like it. They have now the option to work with the regulators, or at least get some sort of clarity on the intent of the regulators with respect to their product. And yeah, I think it's people like you who make this possible, where our fellows can sort of do great things because there is public policy and Niti Aayog in place. I don't fully understand the merits of Niti Aayog yet, but something I should
I don't
probably
think it's
study.
that. I feel like to an extent there's also like a knowledge gap associated with it, because we as
Absolutely.
research interns also, like, even when we intern, I feel like due to lack of access to certain government databases, our research also falls short on multiple occasions. Actually, like even the other day, I was one texting one of the senior officials and told him that, sorry, I couldn't access certain databases, so I cannot give you the best of my outcomes. And I think that is also like something that, in my opinion, needs to be tackled, because I have read, you won't believe it, the whole 500 pages of the goddamn economics survey has been read through, highlighted, everything by me. Um, Everything, each and every sector, each and every priority of the government, of the budget, everything I've read through. And there have been so many occasions where I want to pose certain questions as to why isn't there data available? Why isn't there certain backing to this? And one of, I think, the most pouring questions in my mind on a daily basis, even until now, is why wasn't the whole survey conducted, the one that was supposed to be happening in 2021, which is still not happened. And I feel like that should be as a basis for a lot of the data that we use in our budgets or any other government documents that help enhance the economy. And that is where our work is not up to the par of what we want it to be, which is, I think, slightly lacking.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually a great insight you're operating with, and like the many other places the government fell short on, and still does. I think this is one of the places that hopefully sooner, but sooner or later, will get around to making a improving, I'd
Yeah.
say, right? So I'm going to prompt you to tell events that people could attend in the city we live in, which is Bangalore, where they can have or attend, be in attendance of intellectual conversations, such as these around economics and politics and other cultural topics. This is the place that our lives intersected without us knowing it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
had we not caught up, we probably would have never known, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I'm going to let you. I think I've
Um,
been very, very specific with the prompt. So,
yeah.
but
Um,
but yeah,
you've been, but I'm gonna add a lot more sources.
yeah.
First, I'm gonna be slightly biased to my college and be like, yeah, please attend my college lectures also. It is actually open for all, which I don't think a lot of
What?
people know. Yeah, a lot
I
of my
didn't
college,
know
we
that.
have a lot of conferences in college, in which we have partnered up with ISEC, we have partnered up with eGrow, we have partnered with a lot many foundations. More specifically, ISEC, I feel like, because we have a lot of international conferences that take place in our college, um, with very minimum fees because it's again sponsored by the government. Um, so we have like around 250 to 70 per person to come and attend, and
Please
they're
do.
wonderful. They're very insightful. We have hackathons, we have competitions. So please come to Mount Carmel. Uh, Other than that, I feel like BIC is a Bangalore International Center. It's a very beautiful, beautiful place for a lot of intellectual minds to come and meet and discuss and attend lectures, attend conferences, and attend workshops. They also have galleries, which I love to watch. But it's a place that fosters a lot of um, uh, I wouldn't like to call it intellectual growth. I'd rather call it expanding of horizons. Um,
Wow. Well
because
put.
yeah, it's not intellectual growth. It's like you amalgamate a lot of different ideas and how do you say perspectives. That it's not just you expanding your brain knowledge. It's about you looking at everything in a different perspective when you go into events in BIC. Another one for economics in particular is people can visit ISEC, Institute of Social and Economic Change. There's also the Indian Institute of Human Settlements, IIHS, which also has a lot of conferences. And lastly, but not the least, IIM Bangalore. They have a lot many conferences that keep happening. I'm also in personal touch with the dean over there, who is Rishikesha Krishnan, who also hosts a lot of economic conferences and talks on public policy and a lot more other things also, even startups and hackathons, which I think all of these are great resources for people to start out in public policy. But if I had to go with a very beginner version, then it's definitely going to be BIC.
Yeah, and I'm always trying to catch up at BIC when there are those economic conferences happening. So I probably wouldn't be seeing you anytime soon at the ones that are
Yeah,
for more seasoned folks. But maybe
yeah,
someday we'll see. And you know, you're spot on about BIC being very, very well built because when I walked through those halls for the first time, I actually felt like I was in a building in Singapore. And it was a very, very recent comparison. There was very specific buildings
yeah,
uh, of that place that BIC reminded me of, and I was just amazed. I probably physically had my jaw down for seconds, if not minutes, when I was looking at the quality of the place that was built by a lot of intellectual minds in Bangalore.
yeah.
Uh, and uh, and yeah, about the galleries, I don't think I've ever gone especially for those, but I've always dropped by them when I'm
Yeah.
going for another event.
If you're interested in gallery visits, I do feel like MAP, which is Museum of Art and Photography, is a wonderful, wonderful place.
You
On
know,
a
that is.
random day, you would find me there anytime.
And our
I am
worlds
not
intersect
even
again.
kidding. Yeah,
So
it's my
when
comfort
my
area.
artistic and artsy friends or otherwise friends who want to see good art, I take them there. And, after we've spent our time going through the different exhibitions, preferably on a Tuesday because that's when entry is free, we head up to the terrace and then we just stand for hours till our legs give in and talk. right? That's such a wonderful place to have meaningful conversations where you're overlooking a beautiful sunset with the high court just bang opposite. And there's also, this museum that we used to go to as kids around science, which is also,
Vishweshwaraya.
yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So I remember going to that place in like a school bus with like a line of like 200
Yeah.
students who, and then we'd see like us entering the room, and like what a student who's 100 students ahead of us is exiting the room, going into the other room, and it's like a line of ants that are just following the path.
I
Uh,
still remember like the first time I think I went to Vishweshwar, there was this metal ball I used to hold and like your hairs used to stand up.
oh
And
yeah, oh my
yeah, there was
God.
like one of those, and there was like a mini Jurassic Park sort of a thing that they had emulated over there too. It was wonderful.
Wow. These are the memories from
Of yeah,
our childhood that I
yeah.
don't know, just make me so happy, right?
Even
And
HAL, I think.
oh yeah, I don't know if I've gone to HAL from school, but I've definitely gone with my friends one or two times. And then I remember seeing this really old helicopter that was out of commission, and somehow managed to peek through the window, and I saw all of these nuts stashed away that probably some squirrel did because it found a way to get in. And it was wholesome looking at that. Wow, those were the days, right?
Those are the
uh,
days.
but yeah, from the roof of MAP, or terrace, should I say, there is also, these sprawling gardens where you can see the top of trees, because MAP is, I think, 4 stories tall. So it's just a little taller than the trees. So you see like a sea of trees, and then like these velvety sunsets that come in
Yeah,
multiple colors. Bangalore is pretty famous for them. I haven't been on a purple sunset day to MAP yet, but someday. And on the other side, where there's the cafe, you can see the United Brewery Towers with
yeah,
Malia's house if you peek far enough. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
did you know that house actually came onto the market? Like
It is
it got
actually already
auctioned.
sold. It's yeah, it got
Okay.
auctioned to a lady. Yeah, a lady has bought it. There was another funny encounter that I had with someone recently. They were from the events industry, which also have been somehow on and off in. Uh, yeah, so they were telling me, I think, about hosting a huge gala for the who's who over there, and I'm like, oh damn. Yeah, it was a weird conversation, but a great one nonetheless.
Yeah, when that piece of iconic real estate came onto the market, I was with some of my dearest friends, and I remember in that moment we looked into each other's eyes and we said that if we had the money, we would go right now and buy it
Buy
and
it.
own this piece of history forever. And we actually pulled up our Excels and tried to see, could we, somehow manage to put together enough money to even fractionally own it and co-own
Yeah.
it, and with the
I think
bank
that
finance it.
way the whole of the tower I feel like is how do you say it's a pinnacle of Bangalore in its being.
Yeah,
That has in its own small way has defined Bangalore. Also, like the minute probably people come to Bangalore and they see like reels on Instagram, the first thing they
yeah,
probably see is Vijay Mallya's house. And
yeah. There's
surprisingly, if not, a very weird dream of mine has always been I want to reach a point somewhere, someday in life where I can own a house in the tower.
wow, yeah. Fingers crossed. We hopefully will see that.
44 crores is not a small amount.
Yeah, but it's achievable, right? You have your whole life
Yeah,
ahead of you, and you've already
yeah.
done so much. I have a good feeling that it might be. an option for you, if not anything else, right?
Yeah.
So, wow, I definitely do have my own aspirations of owning very, very different styles of real estate all across the world. Uh, have you heard of Sobetes? I
Yeah,
don't
so
know if I'm pronouncing it right.
Sotheby's. It's Sotheby's, but yeah.
Oh, Sotheby's. Okay, thank you. There we go. Yeah, so I randomly stumbled upon their website one day, and I was like, wow. So these people basically sell everything I can think of
Yeah.
that screams opulence, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that is quite something. So, think it's time for the grand reveal. Let's stroll on to the highlight of the present. And
It's not a completed project, but it's something that's
that's all
shaping
right.
up in its own way.
It is and it shall, but it should be the talk of our towns because
Yeah.
this, I think, is something both of us could have benefited from immensely had we had this
Did
when we were
before. Yeah.
uh, growing up. We're still growing up, but when we
But
were
still,
a
yeah.
little more uh,
Yeah.
earlier in our
More like
journey.
on the pinnacle of our childhood sort of a thing.
Yeah, at
When
like the
I,
cusp of maybe junior school or secondary school, depending upon how ambitious you were.
yeah.
Was definitely one who would have probably signed up when I was 7 years old because because
Yeah.
you know one of the reasons why I try to mentor younger students, friends and family casually, is because I felt that if I had a dedicated mentor when I was 6, 7 years old, who was helping me optimize my efforts and helping me compound and stack everything I did, helping me put just that little bit of extra effort into making things reach their logical conclusion, I'd be in a very, very different place right now. But I'm
Yeah.
still glad I stumbled across what I did when I did. I'm in a position to help others, people I love, which is why I'm doing Project Ellie Marcus. That should ideally take up about 30% of my working time, the time I dedicate to giving back. But I'm going to pass it on to you to do the grand reveal on your idea.
Yeah, thank you for calling it idea because it's still not a reality. I do hope it's soon up and rolling. So I really want to build a community, make it into a more premium club for high achieving students in particular. I've taken a lot of inspiration from GrowthX and BHX, and I've looked at their models, looked at Metsa School, looked at Lit School, and I've always wanted to make a amalgamation of all of these and find if I can make something for the youth of Bangalore and multiple cities later on to connect with like-minded individuals, to brainstorm together with people that could help them, to bring a community in which each and every individual brings something to the table, puts in something of their own, whether it's 10%, 30%, whatever it is, and can help each and every other person on that table also grow in their own way. It's a more niche idea of mine, which I think I wish I could bring it to more reality sooner. But one thing I've learned through a lot of interactions that I've had recently, that is before and after the call I had with you, Neil, I think mentorship is not what people are necessarily looking at. I do not want to get people who get like a mentor and be like, okay, I'll tell you to do this and you do this. It's more of a very collaborated effort in which everyone is like, okay, I'll give you these resources. You can choose which one to use out of these. How to use them is your capability. If you want help, I am here. But it's not like the standard Mesa school or any other business school view of teaching.
Yeah, I'm so glad you double clicked on the prerogative of what mentorship should
Mentorship,
be
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember, this takes me back to when I read or I heard or I watched uh, this these lines which said that mentorship is not about telling you what to do, but asking you the right questions to help you get there yourself,
Yeah.
and giving you context points that you would have otherwise taken uh, a longer, more inefficient
Period,
route
yeah.
to finding, right? So,
Yeah.
obviously, the second part of it is something I've added by myself. But yeah, uh, and the reason why I said read, watched, or heard is because I found myself early on picking up on the generic lingo, right? I read somewhere is what people said, and that's what I started saying too. But I was conscious about it because the truth is I don't read very much, and more often than not, it's information I've picked up from conversations or videos that I'm usually sharing. So I make it a point now to be a little honest and a little more forward and try to usher in the more 21st century way of consuming and retaining information, which is audiovisual now, right? So,
Makes
yes,
sense.
coming back to your community, I am sure this is something that will work really, really well. And I'm confident that you'll bring it to life because you've demonstrated how much of a depth you've gone to curate the ideas. And um, if not anything, I'm sure there's going to be a very, very solid concept note ready uh, at the intermission of your endeavor. And I say intermission because I hope you'll come back to it should it not happen now. But there is no reason, I hope, that it doesn't happen. And I like to think that someday I will help people fulfill their dreams, right? Whether it's, uh, academic, a very small set because not an academia fan, but professional or personal. There is this person called Simon Squibb based out of UK that I really really love. He is doing God's work in my opinion, and hopefully one day I'll be able to emulate that. And can't wait to do my part into bringing your community to life. I'm
Thank
sure we
you.
can
Thank you.
probably drop a link where students who are watching this can apply, even if it's a
Yeah.
pre-registration. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
fun stuff.
Yep.
And before we sign off, let's take things into a different angle and talk about how do you stay fit? What do you do to be active?
Walk.
Oh, right, right. I forgot to bring this anecdote up, or rather, I think the conversation was smoothly transitioned elsewhere. But there's this place in Kormangla and in Ranagar that have bungalows of these really accomplished peoples, and there are beautiful houses. So I personally am somebody who doesn't like walking. Like you can make me
Yeah.
run, you can make me do a sport. I'll happily play, and if I'm in the mood, I walk. But even when I'm not in the mood, these are places I would walk. And
Yeah.
whenever I have like a friend from like Ahmedabad or Alwar who is cup, cup coming to Bangalore, I'd probably take them to these places, show them how I would like to spend Sunday mornings, how you do spend Sunday mornings. But yeah, that Bangalore is actually
Yeah.
a very, very walker-friendly city.
Walkable city. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because of how pleasant the weather is relative to the rest of the population centers. It's
Yeah.
getting a little worse, but
Yeah.
their benchmark is so low. We have a long time until we reach there.
Yeah, yeah. I
As long
think
as
even in addition to Kormangla and Indanagar, I feel like I am a much more traditional person. I am a person who would
old town girl.
not like that. I would feel like
Okay.
I'm a person who probably cannot live without wearing a sari once in a month.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Fun stuff.
yeah, I love wearing saris. So I'm like more traditional and little conventional, also slightly in nature, very slightly. But I like to walk a lot around Baswangudi and Jainagar and JP Nagar. They're very pretty locations and very pretty
Absolutely.
houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they have much more of a green cover than Kormangla, definitely.
Especially after the Ichipura flyover came, I don't know if those trees disappeared overnight or if I were traveling or what it was, but there was just one day where I noticed that the trees were gone. And I've spent a good 10 years of my life going through that road every single day to school on academic days, right? And I didn't realize how much of an impact the trees on your way to school have on you, right? I
Yeah,
just, I have seen those humongous
just
trees
trees.
with
Yeah.
like beautiful branches and the leaf cover on the top, just protecting me from the sun when we sit on the signal. uh, okay, wow, I can talk on and on about this. So we're going to move
Yeah.
into sports, right? So apart from walking, what else do you enjoy doing?
I do enjoy doing horse riding. Yeah, it's. I started off in eighth grade. I had injury also, so I stopped in between. But I hope to be as great as this was back then. But yeah, I do take part in competitions now and then. I have been training at ARPA, which is Army and Riding Polo Academy, and I have won six or seven medals in
Congratulations.
yeah
uh,
in show jumping. But yeah,
I think we'd have to do a completely separate video talking about your accolades because that will definitely take another hour. But yeah, it's crazy, right? Like horseback riding, I think ARPA is dedicated to making that affordable and accessible. Something that's written off as an elite man's sport in today's world uh,
yeah,
is is something that I'd love to see more people participate in. I don't know.
yes,
It's just a very, very different feeling, and uh, I have been sort of delaying signing up, getting my boots on the ground. I did.
it's a whole experience on its own. I feel like because now that I do not go, I start to appreciate it a lot more about my days of when I used to go. And it was hectic. It was like getting up at 4 and going to Domlur, and it was a line of like 25 people, and it since it's the army, it's like no more than 25, no less than 25,
Yeah.
and they are
Very-
very strict on that. And
yeah.
it's like a life or death situation. Like if you come like a minute late, you wouldn't get a seat, and bye, you're done, go home. And
Oh my God.
it was an experience on its own. Like you go, and then you know that in the process of going at like 6 in the morning, you're gonna forget something. You're gonna forget a helmet or a boot or something, and there's always that one shop open to give it to you on rent for the day. And it is
Wow.
like those small things which just how do you say create it as the experience it is. And I still whenever I pass by ARPA, whenever I pass by the gates, the massive tank to enter ASC, I always have like a smile on my face. I'm like, oh, I miss this place so much.
And Yeah, I think the nostalgia inevitably flares up, right?
Yeah,
It's a bittersweet feeling. It's just so beautiful, but then
yeah.
uh, when it hits, it's crash.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think it's its own kind of wonderful, the feeling of nostalgia. Uh, but yeah, one day I shall see you on the course, where all booted and suited. But for now, I have recently taken up golf, so yeah, that's fun. I think I shall be doing a little bit of golf here and there. If that's something that doesn't work out, then probably horse riding will move up the docket really fast.
yeah,
But yeah, I want to spend some time learning these different sports and activities, right? And
yeah,
coming back to when you shared about how reaching late would mean that would have severe consequences, all I could think of was how passively the principle of discipline was instilled into you, right? Because
yeah,
in our modern lives, there is a sort of room created for delays, and there is an accommodation, right? But that doesn't happen in a militant setup. So I know that if I reach school a few minutes late, the guard is going to allow me up to, a reasonable extent. And there is that little scope and wiggle room that makes us, uh, I think, not our best selves. Uh, I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I'd say that the it makes the world go round, but we can all do with a little bit of discipline in our lives.
discipline and punctuality. Yeah,
Yeah, it having, or at least for a small
yeah,
section or a phase in somebody's life, there should be some sort of discipline, so you know that you can if you were to, right?
yeah.
And when the stakes are incredibly high, it's this exposure of discipline that I think will help you meet the bar that's required. And of late, I've been slacking off a little more than I'd like. So I guess this is a wake up call to maybe get a little more
Yeah,
disciplined.
I think that's like one thing. It doesn't have to do with discipline. I think it's a combination nostalgia, discipline, and punctuality. So every Sunday, I try my best to go to this place called Airlines. It's very close to.
Another Bangalore classic.
It's a Bangalore classic,
It
I
is.
swear. And
You know,
I try always to go on a Sunday morning at 7 and always sit over there with a nice cup of chai and dosa
oh
and
man, Avantika, you
just,
have an old soul. Early
I am an
morning
old.
on a Sunday, and at least you're smart enough to not to go in later because the rush would be
There
impossible.
I cannot after like 9:30, 10, please.
It's
I wouldn't want to deal. But
wow.
there's some great cars that come in at 10, which I stay for. But yeah,
You're an
I'm
octagonal,
a
huh?
definite old soul. I'm an octogenarian. But I think there's like these places like these which, when you told about the Ajipura trees getting cut down, I
Yeah.
was obviously distinctly remembering this because no matter what, how many generations it has seen, but the banyan trees or airlines have stayed no matter what. And
Ah,
that is like
yeah,
something that I feel like is an element of Bangalore in its own
it
because
is.
it has, I think, there was this interview I'd seen of Irfan Razak and a few other people also who talked about airlines and how it has been a soul connection for them also since they have been there since they were a child and they've grown up also looking at airlines grow with them, and that itself is like a part of so many people, and I seriously wish that airline is going to be a part of my journey too, as I
Yeah,
grow.
till we're like, old and in our
Yeah,
in the last couple of concluding days,
years.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because even if there is better food outside, even if there's better ambience in other places. There's no other airlines, and I don't think
And
it can
yeah,
be
I
replicated.
yeah,
It's the
definitely.
OG drive-in
Yeah.
concept. Like, man, those chairs and tables and wow.
Yeah, it's
I
I should definitely catch you at airlines one day.
Someday. It's a bit of a hike from here. Definitely won't be walking, but even if I do drive, the logistics of it makes it so
So
inconvenient.
yeah,
Or,
yeah,
but
but hey,
that's
the
actually
logistics of it also makes it good in its own way. You can have a dosa sitting in your car.
car. Yeah.
Yeah,
If only my father would let me eat in my car.
yeah,
I'm kidding, of course.
yeah.
No, but yeah, someday an airline state it shall be where we reminisce of the different things that are no more, and yeah, I really don't think airlines is going to go anywhere, and I hope that's true because I know of people who have left Bangalore and they come back and they make
Back.
sure, irrespective of how packed their schedule is, to take
They
the
will make
trip.
sure time
And
for
yeah,
yeah
exactly. To
airlines.
just like do a darshan almost at this point,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if they don't have the time to,
yeah.
spend at this almost religious and sacred
I
place.
think this is like a small anecdote of mine. I think this relates a lot to the airlines thing. So my dad was actually in IMA, and right next to IMA, there's like this small chai tapri wala called Ram Bhai. I'm not sure if I've heard stories of them, but yeah, he's like this very small tapri which sells chai, and every morning apparently he'd like greet IMA alumnus with like all smiles and ask them how the exams are going, how the papers are going. He'd serve chai to the professors, to the students, to everyone. And because of the new IIM campus, which is very close to my house, in fact, me and my dad used to always brainstorm and be like, how about we just make a Rambhai 2.0 and get all venture capitalist funding from IMA?
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty genius idea. Like, there is always place for a chaiwala in this country,
Yeah,
and like the, there are memes around it where you see doctors outside hospitals at the tapri maybe doing things that inside they ask you to not, and then there are these students and profs of countless colleges that have been going to the same chaiwala, right? I can
yeah,
totally imagine students coming back to their alma mater and making sure they catch up with their chaiwala bhaiya, because at
yeah.
this point, that person is an integral part of your student life, right? Uh,
Yes, yes.
and especially if they are the ones that are accommodating and they let a few bills slide at the end of the month when you're running low on pocket money, or give
That's
you a
literally me with my MCC dosa, and I think the auntie is probably fed up with me like having like four dosas in one go.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're now a certified Bangalore girl because of your
Yes.
dosa appetite. Super proud. Yeah, man, I used to have a lot of dosas too. I still do, but my appetite's shrunk. So yeah, just this afternoon, I overate because I couldn't let go of my dosa. so, uh,
Where?
at Amadam, not as
Okay.
fancy, new, but yeah, decent place, like a decent dosa. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, it. I think for the generations to come after us, Amadam is going to be the new airlines, especially for the people who are in the more urban population centers, uh, because yeah, the old town where airlines is at, which is the
Yeah.
actual heart of Bangalore, has very little
Yeah.
residential area, right?
I
So
think like airlines itself is also how do you say a catalyst for the idea that I had with the collaboration, because I feel like when I do go to airlines and I see a lot of people networking over there, like there'll be some every time I've gone to airlines, it's been a very how do you say wholesome experience, because I've always seen some or the other person tell hi to another person, be like, oh, how have you been? It's been a long time. What are you working on? I'm just like, this is what I want to see again. because it is so wholesome, it is so idea generating, it's so collaborative, it's so how do you say, I don't know what's the right terminology for it, but I feel like it's
I get
um,
the idea, and I'm pretty
yeah,
sure like you're articulate. So you know, our generation lacks it. Like, I really don't think very many of us would have the courage to go up and strike a conversation
conversation.
with with a random person, right? And
Yeah,
very recently, at this event I was at in Bombay, I had to do a lot of mastering to actually go and start saying hi. And I probably spoke to 40 people in a day, which sounds very little, but it's a lot. So going in, I thought I'd speak to maybe 200 people, but oh man, talking to people takes a lot of energy.
time,
I underestimated how much effort it takes to strike up a conversation. And I think the reason why that's the case is because I try to make them meaningful and I try to add value to them. So, and I very intently listen to their story. I catch myself sometimes trying to sort of I catch myself sometimes where I am mentally elsewhere when the other person is speaking. But yeah, I've learned that listening is important, and now there have been so many instances where I have tried to give my entire attention to the person I'm speaking to, and yeah, I think I'm getting better at it. So good stuff.
yeah,
Avantika, what would be wholesome is watching the community you curate uh, outside when they randomly meet up, and they're like, "Hey, how's it going? It's been a while, right?" When you
yeah,
witness that with strangers, and you become the force that makes it happen, and
yeah,
should you have the pleasure to unknowingly witness it, I think that's going to uh, be unmatched and unparalleled to any
definitely,
other experience you'd have. Definitely in
yeah,
the top few moments of life, right?
yeah,
And I really wish that for you. So yeah. Uh, I'm going to sign off now on a note that there's a fellow from a community I'm in who wrote a tweet that said, "I am so grateful for the internet." So this is, of course, capturing the essence, and I don't quote him, but he said that I'm so grateful for the internet because being the intellect that he is, he didn't have many people of his fraternity, of our fraternity, growing up in the default environment, right? That the people you live with, the people you go to school to, may not necessarily have the same inclinations and motivations that we do. So he was grateful for the internet because he had the opportunity to meet other like-minded folks that from across the globe to brainstorm with and feel like he's at home with, right? Uh, Being at home is a feeling that you have with people more than you have with a particular place for people like us who uh, okay, I probably shouldn't generalize, but for the people who feel out of place when they're in their own social settings that are by default, uh,
yeah,
when you finally find your tribe that you vibe with, I think that there is a dimension of the feeling of feeling at home that gets unlocked, which makes you whole. So yeah, this was wonderful. And do you have any closing notes, or
I feel like
before we close,
it's
anything that I
it's
missed?
not a
Gathering?
closing note, but
Okay, yeah.
I feel like what I want to tell to the viewers in general is like, don't be afraid to step out of a boundary, whether it's one that you've created for yourself or something that's been created for you. And no matter what happens, there's always going to be someone somewhere who's willing to work with you, on the most crazy idea ever. If I got a garage to build a brick, people can do anything. So just don't be afraid to try out new things and work on it as much as possible. It may seem crazy at the start. Obviously, when you're at 0% or even 0.001, it's going to seem like whole world is breaking away and you wouldn't want to do it because it feels way too crazy to be true. But work on it until it becomes a reality. It's just going to be there someday.
Wow, that is a very, very, very powerful note. Takes me back to Steve Jobs when he said that, you know, all you have to do is ask. And in
Yeah,
his initial days, he shared this anecdote of how he would literally pick up the yellow pages and call people down and ask them for help. Right? It's an asymmetric risk at the end of the day. You have everything to gain, but nothing to lose, right?
to
Which is
lose. Yeah,
a beautiful, beautiful perspective. And
yeah,
when you were sharing uh, the idea that is uh, be biased towards taking action, it just rings different. Like, cannot get behind that message more. Like, uh,
yeah,
that is probably some of the best advice I have received throughout my life, and will continue to be on the top for a very, very long time. So,
yeah,
so yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And when you go through with your journey and you get more insights, I want you to keep adding them to the Notion page that we're going to create for
definitely
you,
will do.
so that we can add little timestamps, and maybe 10, 15 years down the line have like a follow-up pod where we walk through what the document we've co-created over all these
Yeah,
years, right? I think
definitely.
that is a whole different kind of wholesome feeling. So yes, the this is completely open to you now. I implore you to share your anecdotes and stories of everything that you'd like to. Uh, if we've missed anything or anything new that comes to mind,
I don't think we've missed much,
haven't tried.
but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. And whatever happens, just focus is what I'd say. Don't
excellent.
lose the focus is what I always say to people. Like, obviously, I am also a person who's a frequent party goer, and I think recreation is always great enough. But in the midst of it all, no matter what you do that gives you the adrenaline, the rush, find something that gives you as much adrenaline to work on something in your life and build a career that provides for you, is what I'd say. It's not you providing for a career for someone else's lack of or anything. It's something that provides for you, that helps you achieve your goals, helps you achieve your dreams, is what I'm wanting to share with people.
Wow. And I'm sure you're going to make it happen for very many people through your community.
Yeah,
And even if we did miss anything, there's always a reiteration, right? A second part,
definitely. Yeah.
a follow up that we can do.
Yes.
So I'm going to roll your outro now. So, final call.
No, no, go on, go on. I
All
wouldn't
right.
disturb you at
So,
all.
this evening, I was in conversation with Avantika Dhar, who is pursuing economics at Mount Carmel and is a fellow polymath, as you have gathered. She is definitely one of the most interesting people I know, and ranks highly because of her interests and achievements. And yeah, there's a special place for her because of how much our lives intersect without us even knowing it, right? So we ran into each other and didn't know it, and uh, have worked on similar projects, have done similar things in spite of being two very different individuals, right? So yeah, that is who she is. There, as as we do here at Excellence, we there is a Notion page about Avantika where you can read more about her, find her social handles, and she shall continue to share her story and wisdom for the foreseeable future. And
Yes,
that
definitely.
that is us signing off.
Yep.